Okay, just picture this. It's a totally normal day, and then alerts start flashing across the world. What if the most unthinkable decision of our lifetime was actually made? Today, we're going to break down what that would really look like, step by step, based on actual military doctrine. Let's get into how this chilling scenario would all unfold. You know, it's the big question that kind of hangs over all of us. Is a nuclear strike just some old Cold War movie plot, or is it something that could genuinely happen today? Well, the reality is, the systems, the protocols, they're all still very much active and in place. So we're going to explore exactly how this terrifying possibility could become a reality.
For most of us, there would be no warning. It would just begin with a simple, terrifying fact, sent through secure channels. The launch is happening. And not just any missiles. We're talking nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles streaking through the sky. The clock has officially started.
And the target is set. A nation that's been at the center of geopolitical tension for decades. See, this isn't some abstract war game against a random country. This is a very specific, high-stakes scenario with a real target, and the consequences of that are immediate and, well, they're massive.
So, how does something like this even begin? Well, it all boils down to one single decision, made in a process that is incredibly controlled and unbelievably fast. And once it's made, that's it. It's the point of no return.
I mean, just stop and think about the sheer amount of power concentrated in that one statement. This whole system was designed back in the Cold War for one thing and one thing only: speed. In a crisis, there's no time to call Congress, there's no Supreme Court review. That authority rests entirely with one person. It is, without a doubt, the most absolute power held by any single human being on the planet.
And the speed of this whole process is just staggering. First, the president gives the authorization. Within minutes, top military and defense leaders are brought in. Then comes a really critical part: authentication. The president uses codes from that famous briefcase, the nuclear football, that follows him everywhere. The second that order is verified, it's zapped instantly to the launch crews.
And this is probably the most chilling part of all. Once that authenticated order is sent, the process is basically automated and completely irreversible. The military is legally and operationally required to carry it out. The missiles will fly. There are no takebacks, no, oops, cancel that button. All right, so the order's been given. The next unavoidable question is how? How is it actually executed? Now, the US has what's called a nuclear triad, a really formidable system. But for a situation like this, one method really stands out as the most likely choice.
So, you've got three main options. There are land-based ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. There are long-range stealth bombers. And then there are ballistic missile submarines. Now, ICBMs are typically reserved for a conflict with someone like Russia or China. Bombers are slower, and you can actually recall them. But submarines, oh, they're a whole different ballgame. They are the silent, unseen delivery service.
And here's exactly why. A nuclear sub is always out there, hiding deep under the ocean. It's almost impossible to find. From the moment it gets the order, it can fire its missiles in a matter of minutes. And once those submarine-launched missiles are in the air, there is no stopping them. They are silent, they are fast, and they are absolutely decisive.
Okay, so the missiles are launched from a submarine nobody can see. Now the story shifts to the other side, to the receiving end. The timeline from launch to impact is terrifyingly short, and you know the first targets might not be what you'd expect.
You see, unlike in the old Cold War movies, the first strike probably isn't aimed at a big city. It would be what's known as a counterforce strike. The military doctrine on this is very clear. Your number one goal is to take out the enemy's ability to fight back, so you go after their military and strategic assets first.
So, what gets hit first? We're talking about hardened military bases, known missile silos, and any critical nuclear facilities. And in a more extreme version of this attack, you might even target leadership and command centers just to sow chaos and make it impossible for them to coordinate any kind of retaliation.
And look, we're not talking about some all-out world-ending apocalypse here. A realistic first strike would probably be pretty limited, very strategic. The US would likely use a small number of warheads, maybe just one, maybe up to 10. But don't let that small number fool you. Each one of those is powerful enough to completely vaporize its target. So how much warning would they get? Well, a missile launched from a submarine somewhere in the region could hit its target in just 10 to 20 minutes. That is it. There's virtually no time for any kind of meaningful reaction. No time to evacuate, no time to prepare for what's coming.
And then impact. It starts with a flash of light, so bright it's blinding. Then a fireball, expanding outwards, hotter than the surface of the sun. It's followed by a shockwave that just rips through everything in its path. Entire military installations, entire areas are just gone in the blink of an eye.
But a nuclear strike is never, ever the end of the story. It's actually the beginning of a terrifying new chapter. Even without its own nukes, Iran would not and could not just sit there. The conflict would escalate immediately.
Iran's response would have to be swift and what we call asymmetric. You can expect conventional missile strikes on U.S. bases all over the Middle East. You'd see attacks on key American allies, a huge effort to shut down global oil shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and of course, the mobilization of all its allied forces across the region. Within hours, this isn't just a strike anymore, it's a full-blown regional war.
And a regional war is just the start of it. The shockwaves from that nuclear detonation would be felt in every capital city, on every stock exchange, and in every home around the world. And this is where things could truly spiral out of control.
The entire global system would go into shock. You'd see financial markets just crash as total uncertainty takes over. Oil prices would skyrocket overnight, crippling economies. And every other major nuclear power, we're talking Russia, China, they would put their forces on the highest possible alert, which dramatically increases the risk of a deadly miscalculation.
What's so important to understand here is that the use of a nuclear weapon, for the first time since 1945, shatters the ultimate global taboo. It just changes the rules of war for everybody forever. The world crosses a line that has managed to hold for over 75 years.
And honestly, that's the scariest part of this whole thing. It wouldn't just be a strike and its immediate aftermath. It would be the start of something so much bigger, a chain reaction with consequences that escalate way beyond anyone's ability to predict, let alone control. It might not start as a global nuclear war, but it could very, very easily end up as one. Which really leaves us with one last, pretty haunting question. Once that line is crossed and nuclear weapons are back on the table after more than 80 years of restraint, what's to stop them from being used a second time, or a third? The first strike would absolutely change the world, but the biggest question of all is, would it also be the last?